Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and alongside me, I got a full house. Mac, welcome,
Good evening. I know today's not a holiday.
and Gio, welcome as well.
What is good, guys?
It is definitely not a holiday at the moment, but we're going to be covering a lot of great action from this midweek in the Champions League with the quarterfinal games that were played, and we'll also preview some key matches coming up in the Premier League. Before we get into it, though, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. So the first game we're going to cover now is actually Benfica 0, Inter Milan 2. Gio, you mentioned many pundits had Benfica as the favorites going into this game, and even to move into the semifinals after this stage. And I had to look back. Benfica actually did top their group in the group stages in the group with PSG. So you know what, that really shows that they are a team to be reckoned with. But I think they would feel very disappointed, Gio, in the result of this game and the manner that they sort of went down. What were your thoughts on this game?
I thought generally the entire game, they had their chances. They had their chances very early. But Onana was huge for Inter Milan very early, standing tall, standing very big in goal. But yeah, it just felt like, after a couple of saves, Inter Milan kind of had that momentum, and every time they went forward on that counter, it just looked more dangerous. They were pushing very hard for the counter, crosses into the box, and everything like that. And then that's how it kind of led to the first goal. It was a counterattack. I think it was who was it exactly? Let me have a look. Where is
play
it?
across
Sorry,
the ball?
guys. Yeah. Why did I forget it all of a sudden?
It was Bastoni.
Bastoni. Yeah. So Bastoni, great ball in from the left-hand side and into Barella, who could be a Liverpool player, who knows? But great effort. He's not the tallest player, but he got up there, got a touch on it, and scored out of the reach of the keeper, and that was a very well executed counterattack in every way possible.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great way to put it. Benfica definitely started very, very well, and we'll probably touch on it a little bit in our next segment as well. But the keepers for both Milan teams really coming out huge for them, keeping them inside the game. And even after, I think Inter Milan went up 1-0, Benfica had a goal line scramble with several players trying to get onto the end of a chance to try to make it level. But it looked like Benfica, though they did have more chances and I think also controlled more of the ball, they just lacked some creativity up front, maybe the final ball, where they really couldn't find it, and eventually Inter Milan got a penalty awarded to them, whether they think that's a penalty or not. Lukaku did convert it, and it's now 2-0 for Inter Milan. So what were your takes, Matt?
So it felt like for the longer this game took where Benfica wasn't going to score, Inter Milan looked more and more likely that they could potentially be able to snag one. It seemed like Inter were like, okay, we understand that Benfica is going to have a lot of possession, kind of dominate that area of the pitch, but we're going to be able to take our key moments, and if we can be clinical in those moments, we're going to be able to come out with a strong result and put them in a stronger position going into the second leg of this matchup. And that's exactly what they did. In the first half, I think both of you were spot on in terms of Benfica dominating, but majority of their shots came from outside the box. No one really was able to kind of convert a strong couple on target. I think there's only one shot on target in the first half, one again in the second half. So from all their possession, from their dominance in terms of shot, there wasn't kind of a clear cutaway chance, I feel like, for Benfica to be able to, okay, this was the moment. So Inter Milan, I felt like, did exceptionally well in regards to how they're going to defend, and the key part for them in terms of how they're going to be able to utilize the wing backs, Dumfries on one side, DiMarco and kind of Bastoni coming up a couple times as well on the left hand side for Inter Milan. Those were kind of the players that shown up for me, where in transition Dumfries could have easily gotten a goal from kind of assist off of Bastoni in between the two goals as well. He had a good opportunity, so there were in those moments, those breaking wingbacks for Inter Milan, I feel like were the difference, because at the time Benfica were definitely trying to kind of go all in, try to apply as much pressure. They understood that this was a moment for them to be able to kind of hopefully put themselves in a stronger position coming out of this leg of the tie. So I do give full credit for Inter Milan here. And my absolute favorite part of this entire game, and we're going to touch on this later, is with Lukaku scoring. A Chelsea player, technically speaking, has scored a goal, guys. I think that's like someone that used to play for Chelsea, technically still does in some ways, because I think it's a loan deal, right? Scored a goal.
Yeah.
So that's just an icing on the cake of the fixture, and my favorite fact about this entire thing, to be honest.
That's completely fair. Going back to, I guess, how the game played out, Gio, maybe I'm looking into it a little bit too much in terms of bias for the Italian league, because I'm going to be completely honest, I don't watch as much of the Portuguese league, but it feels like the way the Italian league is at this moment, a lot more, definitely nowadays, much more offensive-minded teams, and so Inter Milan on a week in, week out basis face more waves of pressure, and we're able to sort of withstand that. Whereas for Benfica, it just looks like maybe they're currently first in the Portuguese league, and maybe they kind of like Bayern sometimes takes it too easy, basically because their league is not as competitive, and they might find it a little more challenging in the Champions League. Do you think that might have something to play into this Benfica Inter Milan fixture?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think the general consensus is that the Italian league is getting more scrappy, and it's not as fine passing as it used to be. It's a little bit more grit now. So it's not going to look as cute. Obviously, it's not going to look as elegant. But it's to get the job done. The job is to win football games, and if you have to adjust your game to a more, I wouldn't say a more modern, but more physical game. Kind of get the job done type play style, then yeah, you're gonna have those games, and if you do those, if you're doing things other teams don't do, you're gonna put yourself at an advantage, especially if it's scrappy enough to get you a win or for a goal line clearance. They got it that game as well, so I think it's nice to see. Actually, it just adds another layer of dimension to the Italian league, and we noticed a lot of that in even like the AC Milan game, which we'll get into. It's getting very scrappy. So yeah, no, we definitely like to see it.
Yeah, for sure. And now with this result, Matt, quickly, Inter Milan will now play at San Siro against Benfica with a lead. What are the chances Benfica can overturn this result? What do you think?
I think there's still a fair shot, because thus far this year, Inter Milan haven't looked the best. They've done well off in this individual fixture, but I think in terms of their Serie A form, they're winless in their last 4 games prior to this matchup, losing 3, drawing 1. So it has been on a kind of a torrent run of form recently. So I would be a little bit concerned about that, and I feel like Inter Milan didn't need to come out with a positive performance to put them in a position of any chance, in my opinion, getting out. Because if the roles were reversed, do I think if Benfica was up 2-0, if Inter Milan had a shot to come back, I would have leaned heavily more so no, given how poorly they've actually have played. So there is still a chance, of course, but considering how Inter Milan have played, so I think Benfica still can come into that fixture potentially with confidence, because as we all know, a 2-goal lead in this type of fixture with still full 90 minutes to play isn't the heaviest of mountains to kind of climb. So Benfica still in with the shot for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep an eye on that game. But I guess now moving on to the second game we're going to cover. Not sure if Bayern have a chance, because they did lose 3-0 at the Etihad. Man City, just the way they've been performing over the last couple of weeks, Mac, and they just continued with sort of this performance. It was interesting to note, though, Tuchel, as we know, when he played Pep in the 2021 Champions League final, Pep didn't start a center defensive mid. And maybe Tuchel returned the favor by not starting an out-and-out striker in this game for Bayern Munich. And maybe that had an effect on the game. What did you think of the game, man?
This game, if you look at it, take a step back and you kind of look at kind of the world of football at the moment, in some ways, there were some moments of play Bayern did look good, especially in I would argue, in the first 5-10 minutes of the second half, where Leroy Sané was shooting everywhere, shooting on sight, really. Couple from 30 yards, and then taking one in on the left-hand side and Everest, and how to make a smart save. Outside of that, if we were to cut out those moments, which I understand it might be difficult to do when you're looking at it from this point of view, but from really a high-level big box view, I would say when City are playing like this, I don't think there's any team in the world that can kind of really get close to them in terms of technical ability, in terms of being able to apply pressure, in terms of them being able to dominate possession, consistently create opportunities, and play in different fashions where even if you bring in a second striker like Julian Alvarez, you're still going to have high level of opportunities created for either him, Haaland, or him and Haaland, with everybody within their front five being a threat. So it's interesting to see that this is kind of how, in some ways, the Champions League statement was very big for them. Everyone knew going in, this is probably the toughest fixture, toughest tune-up that they could have potentially faced other than Real Madrid in terms of matchup-wise. So for them to really put knife to the sword to this team in this fashion was very, very impressive, and kind of shows the intent that this team is taking. Again, they're considering how they played, it'll be interesting to see, because they still... we may be going on to this later, is that they still have a lot of matches to potentially play. I think up to the end of the season, which is in just over a month and a bit, they still have to play 15 more games if they stay in the FA Cup and the Champions League to go until then, if they were to theoretically win out and reach the final for both. So they have a lot of games, and I'm a little bit worried about this back four, if they're going in terms of minutes wise, because they've been playing a lot. But to go back to this individual game, like I said, I feel like City were at such a high level where it's hard for them really to compete, and even a world-class team, a team that going in was one of the favorites to win the Champions League, they were so clear and above their competition.
Yeah, no, it's great way to put it, and I love how you highlighted the defensive display that Man City put in, because we know the offensive threat that they bring, but Gio, that was a defensive masterclass from those Man City players, the way they were able to win the ball back in key areas, those one-on-ones, standouts, obviously, Akanji and Nathan Ake, dealing with those tricky wingers that Bayern started with. And yeah, just simply the way they defended as a whole really made sure that Bayern didn't have any clear chances, resulting in a lot of shots outside the box. Was it a total domination for you in this game, Gio? What did you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think you said it best with their back line, even contributing offensively in the opposition box. Obviously coming from the third goal, ball in, John Stones through to Haaland, and Haaland getting his goal. I know Max, very happy about that, as he's a big John Stones fan. But no, I thought, you pointed it out very well. Akanji, great game against Kingsley Coman. He was fantastic. Coman, wanted to dance, try to get by him, and Akanji was a brick wall for City. And that's everything you can ever ask for from a defender. A player that is obviously much quicker than you, not panicking and just playing your game, really, and he's done it on the national side as well. Being a very staple center back for them. And then, I think the most important thing, obviously, Bayern's standout player is Jamal Musiala, and I think I mentioned it to you guys or in the doc that I wrote, that they collapsed on him very, very efficiently. 2 to 3 guys on him as soon as he's had the ball. His dribbles were side to side, no front and back. So that goes to show you, this is peak City. This is peak City, where as soon as they lose the ball, there's 2 or 3 guys winning the ball immediately. Although they didn't win the possession. That's probably the only thing they didn't win that day is the percentage of the possession they had. But hey, they'll give it up any day to win such a dominant performance, especially in the Champions League, which is, you know, Pep's last Infinity Stone. So hey, I think he'll be very happy. You know, I think they obviously should still play a top lineup, as we know. You don't want to let up in the Champions League. It's not fun. They've let, you know, big leads leave before. You know, obviously as recent as last year. So I think they'll learn from last year and really just try to kill the game as much as possible. Maybe even score 3 more. You know, so yeah, all credits to City this game.
Definitely credit to City, but Mac, on the flip side, it's quite unfortunate, but it's worth to mention. Tuchel's obviously first game in charge for Bayern in the Champions League, and a standout player for Bayern. I guess not the type of way he would want to stand out is obviously Upamecano, who his mistake in the caused the second goal, him taking a extra long touch, which Grealish was able to get on the end of, and then set up that a ball for Haaland to set up that assist. But Tuchel's comments, obviously, it was an individual mistake, decision-making mistake, and unfortunately, on this level, they got punished brutally. You know, this is something that you really can't be doing at the highest level in world football. And I wanted to mention this, probably I think mentioned it to you guys in our private conversations. Bayern have, even though they've been so convincing going forward this season, defensively they still lack a little bit there. And without Neuer and with sort of this new center back partnership, there are some questions there, Max. So maybe can I get your thoughts on that particular, I guess, mistake or set of events?
Yeah, well, in terms of Upamecano, he throughout the entire game was a kind of a shaky leaf, kind of wind blowing in a leaf in a lot of ways, where he was heavy on possession in terms of decision making, passing the ball out. There were a couple times even after that he could have led to mistakes. Delayed himself, I think at one point. I think there's only kind of it's the only one moment that really stands out to me. I think it was with him that passed it back to Jan Sommer, who tried to clear it but then slipped, which then resulted in a block for Haaland. I think it was Joshua Kimmich that ended up blocking the shot afterwards. So both the defenders didn't look great, but Upamecano was definitely kind of the nail that stuck out the most in terms of kind of mistakes there. And in all actuality, City should have banged in probably a couple more goals. And if it wasn't for someone making some really, really nice saves, it could have been a 5-6-0 game. It'll be interesting to see, because now this is in terms of if they get knocked out of this competition, they'll, prior to Tuchel taking over, they were in their kind of domestic cup, which they have been knocked out, as well as potentially the Champions League within a short time period. So let's just say the start of the Tuchel reign has been going well, and I would love someone to put a camera on Julian Nagelsmann's face just to see his reactions of how he's feeling, because even though things didn't go swimmingly with him, who knows? It could have very well been different, because this matchup, it seemed like from the jump in some ways wasn't close in terms of the quality level, and nothing really changed throughout the entirety of the game, other than, like I said, a couple of minutes from Leroy Sané. But I think Bayern themselves, it'll be interesting to see the changes they do make going into the second leg of this fixture. If you probably see a rotation in defense, I think the interesting part for me that Tuchel didn't employ, which he did previously when coaching Chelsea against this Man City team, is rotating into a 3-4-3. I'm kind of surprised that wasn't a decision there, given how well that formation, because even though he went without a striker, as you had said, and that's similar to what he did with the Chelsea team, playing Kai Havertz, who's more of a 10 as a striker. Oh, he's still playing there, even though he shouldn't be. But the back three and the wing backs were absolutely vital in applying additional coverage, and in transition, getting in behind the defenders for City. And you saw even Pavard or Alphonso Davies in a lot of ways had a track back, and they felt a little bit more uncomfortable doing so, in my opinion, in this particular fixture, considering how high Man City's team was pressing and winning the ball back from the two center halves from Bayern. So it'll be interesting if there are some adjustments. It might be too far gone already. Not even though, yes, 3-0 or still 90 minutes, something could happen. But given this quality of Man City team, I would be it would be a shock. And I would love to quote this and clip this potentially later on. It would be a shock if they lose this from here.
Hey, I love how you mentioned that there might be some changes for their next fixture, and I know we'll touch on that in probably our next podcast to preview the next game. But definitely expect some changes because Gio, it's been reported that there was a little scuffle between some Bayern players after the match, Leroy Sané and Sadio Mane, and that's definitely adding on to the pressure that Tuchel sort of has on his shoulders at this moment. Let me get your thoughts on that, Gio, if you have any at all.
A madness is what I have to say. Look, obviously things aren't going well in the in the Bayern camp as they are going through sort of like a facelift in their management. Even who they want to sell, who they want to bring in. A lot of things are changing. They're kind of adjusting to the times in a way. And, in a way, they're kind of in a similar situation as Chelsea. Obviously not as drastic as Chelsea, but, the whole flip of the script, being once so dominant, without a doubt, being the Bundesliga champions. Now it's, will they end up being champions? Who knows? It's very possible that they could lose it. Yeah, no, I think it's just two players that are obviously frustrated and two players that are so used to being dominant in clubs they were at before. And obviously, so Sané hasn't had the greatest tenure at Bayern, and Mane, because of injury, hasn't really been a consistent staple in that lineup either. It's just frustration from two players. Now, how they deal with it is going to be another thing. Obviously, Sané being German, I don't know how much favor the media will play towards Sané or fans will play towards Sané. I know Mane is the new blood, so hey, if rumors are true, and they could be getting rid of Mane as soon as this summer, I'm sure there's clubs, lining up that are willing to take that on. And, we know Mane as a very, kind-hearted person. Even all the stories about him, wanting, cracked iPhone screen and everything. Rather give the money back, to his country and to help develop the country. So, it was a misjudgment on his part, and he's come out and apologized and everything like that. It seemed like they were okay in training this today, so hopefully they figure it out. But I wouldn't mind seeing Mane go and go to a club that can really appreciate him.
Okay, well, one thing I definitely want to keep my eye on, and I've watched this a couple of times, is I think it's best it doesn't go unsaid. Rodri's banger of a goal. Just wanted to mention that before we wrap up this part, because weak foot, top corner, no chance for the keeper. Anyways, we're going to take a quick break here, guys, and then we'll be back with some more Champions League quarterfinals to discuss, so stay with us. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We're going to continue our Champions League quarterfinal coverage with AC Milan 1, Napoli 0. Mac, first in the Serie A, facing fourth, and both teams played each other recently on April 2nd, and AC Milan were 4-0 winners then. This game, I guess similar outcome. AC Milan did come out on top, but it was definitely a closer game. It is worth noting that Osimhen did not play for Napoli in this game, and so they were definitely missing a striking option up front. But they had their chances, but AC Milan eventually came out with the win. What were your takes on this game, Mac?
It's definitely fascinating because it's always. I always love to see when teams play consecutively within such a small time period, to see any adjustments, any changes, and how the team is going to try to kind of overcome potentially either getting a loss, or if they're going to win, what type of adjustments they're going to now kind of use to further still make sure that they're still in a better position. So I love when these kind of things happen. It reminds me very much to a couple of years ago when, like, I think it was there was like El Clasico like 4 times in the span of a month. So I always love like that. It's kind of like the home and home series in baseball, and this happened more recently in the NBA. as a side note. But going back to this individual game, I thought this was a fascinating matchup. It's very interesting to see that we're very much definitely Premier League focused, and seeing these Serie A teams perform well in the Champions League. And it looks like right now we're potentially tuned up for an all Serie A semi-final. Through AC Milan in this game, I do agree in terms of what you're saying, Ray. It was much closer. I thought Napoli were the better team. They definitely try to implement their style. They had a lot more shots. They had a lot more shots to target. They had more possession. Overall, on the face of it, you would look at that and kind of give it the better team. Of course, the red card to Anguissa in the 74th minute didn't really help their cause to be able to kind of get a later comeback throughout the match. But this was the home leg for AC, where in all actuality, considering how, if you would ask me what are the most difficult places to play in the world is going to Napoli's playing in Naples. They needed to come out with a win if they have any shot going into the second leg of that fixture. So they really did what they needed to do in this timeline. I would still think that Napoli, in my opinion, probably are a little bit more favorites to come out. And it's funny, after this, 40% of Napoli's defeats through this entire season have come from AC Milan, 205. So it's a team that they're going to come, I think, more in a fiery take than ever going into this next fixture. But overall, this game definitely tuned us up for a great second half. So love to see it. And two great teams playing against each other. So like I said, love to see it.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely standout players for AC Milan, though, for me, Rafael Leao and Brahim Diaz. Leao did have a chance early on, Gio, to put AC Milan up ahead, even though they did concede a lot of chances early on. But eventually the goal came through Brahim Diaz, the one who drove at that defense and then passed it to Leao. Poor clearance, and then the chance fell to Benacer, who put that away. But what were your takes on this game overall?
Like I mentioned early on in the podcast, scrappy football really just won them the game. After scoring and obviously Napoli is used to scoring, winning games. So they kind of anticipated the pressure. Were they looking to was AC Milan looking to add another? Absolutely. You get that momentum, you try to get another, but you're definitely sitting back a lot more. Understanding that the pressure was coming and just really almost playing like a Jose-esque game, just play it safe and throw the ball when needed and don't do anything too fancy. If you get the chance, you go for a run. But if you don't, hey, we're comfortable where we're at. So I think to get the win and go into Naples, like again, Max said, very hard stadium to play in. So going in with the lead, I think they definitely adds to their confidence. So definitely another scrappy win for an Italian team. So hey, being a Prem fan, you love to see it.
I love how you mentioned it's a scrappy league with one of the managers there being the all-famous Jose Mourinho. just warms my heart because obviously he's one of, I think it's fair to say, one of our favorites as a whole. I'm going to speak for everyone. But definitely, again, Mac, we mentioned this with the Inter Milan game. Goalkeepers, big part to play in this game for sure as well. Mike Maignan had a save late in the game, 87 minutes from Di Lorenzo, who could have pulled it back even when, as you rightly mentioned, Napoli were down to 10 men. And if they were able to squeeze one back, it would definitely been a little bit easier, I guess, for the next game to approach. But now they kind of have to go all out. And, they do have Osman, but as we discussed, in 2 games, no goals scored for this Napoli side, who have been free-flowing in terms of goals throughout the whole league this season. Does that sort of play into their minds a little bit? Especially as well, Kim picked up a yellow card and will miss that second leg tie. And so I think the way for AC Milan would be to sort of approach it on a counter-attack style. Do you think sort of that plays into effect the next game that these guys face each other in?
Absolutely. I think if we're going to use the Mourinho comparison, it's going to go Mourinho game plan, double down in that way where they're going to be able to kind of absorb pressure, understand they're going to play against a team missing arguably the best defender from their domestic league thus far this season. So they're going to be able to understand that there's a lot of space that they're potentially getting behind, and have a look facing a back line, like I said, that's missing one of their key players. The Milan themselves, in terms of how well they've been defensive in the Champions League, is they have 5 consecutive clean sheets in the Champions League in a row, and that's the longest streak they've had since 04-05 under a manager that we're going to talk about very shortly, under Ancelotti, who had a run of 7 actually games in a row with a clean sheet. So defensively in this competition, they've been very, very good. To play, like you had mentioned, Mike Maignan, I think is a key part of that, and his star is definitely only rising given his performance for the international team with Huluguris injured, and him coming to play in these bigger name fixtures. I think this is definitely going to potentially cement him as a number 1 choice for that national team going forward if he's continuing to put performances like that. But even the back line in front of him with the Danish center half, the captain Kajier, I can't pronounce his name for the life of me, and more importantly, Tomori. In my opinion, a player that definitely I would love to see play more for England. But having a back line, a back 3 really, with goalkeeper and 2 center halves of the quality, you're definitely in a good position to still hold out against a strong, creative, offensive team that has seemed to run ragged across this league domestically in Serie A this season, and really this has been their kryptonite. So it'll be interesting to see how the second leg of the fixture goes, but a strong performance defensively, Milan, in the first half of this fixture, of this leg, and we'll see if it carries over.
We'll definitely see if it carries over and gives us with a all Milan semifinal. But one last game to cover now. Gio, Real Madrid 2, Chelsea 0. Just take it away from here, please.
I yield my team to Gio. I yield my time to Gio. I yield my time. Enjoy.
Hey, I know I said this off camera. But I know you guys remember what I said. I said Vinny was going to go to work. And what did Vinny do? Vinny went to fucking work. Sorry.
That's fair.
Explicit now. But, hey. There are 3 guarantees in life. Death, taxes, and Real Madrid winning in the Champions League. That's what they do. It doesn't matter how they're doing domestically. It doesn't matter. They are born and bred for the Champions League. And Benzema loves to shine in the Champions League. There's a reason why he's still wearing, last year's boots, because he scored so many damn goals in the Champions League. He said, "Screw you, Adidas. I don't want to wear your new stuff. I scored buckets in these goals, and I'm going to continue to score buckets in these goals." In these boots. And just in general, apart from maybe Reece James, getting down the wing, and, getting balls in, trying to get a cut back into the middle of the box, the offense of Chelsea wasn't really doing anything else. And they were very stale at that. So, do Chelsea even deserve the win? No, absolutely not. And then obviously, Chilwell being outran by Rodrigo. There was no, that red card, very fair. No shot he was getting to Rodrigo based on where he pulled him from. Rodrigo was the faster player. Red card may be harsh, but, that probably would have went to VAR. Maybe would have been overturned into a red, but, hey, the Chelsea just can't win. And that's the bottom line, and it's unfortunate they have to face Real Madrid, who again just don't lose in the Champions League. So it was a very fun game for me to watch. I don't know about everyone else, but Mac, did you by any chance have anything to add?
Yes, absolutely. So for one, that red card, again, I don't understand why is Mark Cucurella on the pitch. They subbed him on. And it was his fault. If I'm Ben Chilwell, for whatever Serge Gnabry and Leroy Sané were saying, whatever Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert were saying to each other, if I'm Ben Chilwell, I'm fighting Cucurella. Like, he is so bad, so bad. Because it was 100% his fault. If I'm him, I would have pulled down Rodrigo and immediately went to chase. I would have ignored him. Be like, yeah, ref, give me the red, but I want to make sure I get a suspension too for punching my teammate in his face on camera right now, because he continuously sells us out. And that's what happened. So it's interesting there, and that's just the defensive problems with Chelsea. That's not even tackling their bigger issues, which of course is the fact. I think if I have this correctly, if I want to read out a couple different things that you might be interested in terms of Leeds United, Leicester City, Brentford, Fulham, and Brighton, and Aston Villa have all scored more goals than Chelsea this year in the Premier League. Like it's pathetic in terms of how well they're offensively, and considering how poorly they play defensively. I don't know what to pick. It's really, what do I trash on first? How poorly they played defensively, how poorly they played in possession, how poorly they played offensively. You could pick anything and you could trash on it. There's just too much fruit on the tree. I don't know what to do. I'm confused. There's too many sales on the website. I don't know what to buy. It's just I don't. All of it's poor. All of it sucks. Like, if I'm a Chelsea fan, I wouldn't be a Chelsea fan, and like that's just the end of it. And the worst part is, it's hard for me to be able to even draw any conclusions from how well Real Madrid play, in my opinion, considering how poor Chelsea were. So it's hard to kind of get a litmus test against them to see, is this a team that, similar to last year, is kind of having this legendary run where they're like the underdogs, I would argue this fixture is nowhere near close to last year's fixture in terms of how it played out. So overall, a poor game to watch, a poor game from Chelsea's perspective, but nice for Chelsea. And I think the biggest winner, and something I wanted to be able to point out, is that it was Carlo Ancelotti's 35th win in the Champions League, the outright most of any manager, overtaking Vincent Del Bosque, who had 34. So that just, I guess, if you want to talk about pyramids, managers, where does he put into, like, we always talk about the GOAT conversations. Obviously, he's not up there, but is he getting close? I don't know. But very, very interesting, and lovely to see that.
I would say he's up there, but Gio, what do you think?
I just want to say, what a name you brought up, Vincent Del Bosque. Holy smokes, that was a flashback for sure.
Yeah, and of course, we kind of expected this game to sort of play out the way it did. Interesting to note, Chelsea did start with a 5-3-2. It looked like on paper. I guess the right approach to sort of play more defensive on the first leg. Lampard was only in charge for a couple of days, so he needs to keep things tight, especially going away to Real Madrid, of all places, in the Champions League. Interesting to note as well, Madrid played Camavinga as a left back, and instead of playing Valverde on the right wing, they sort of put him in midfield with Toni Kroos and Modric. And Rodrigo, the player that was brought down by Chilwell, was the player who started at right wing. Now, for me, you guys covered basically everything that really happened in the game, but Gio, I know you're a Madrid fan, but Asensio did come on and scored the second goal. My question for you is, I think this game is pretty much wrapped up, or this tie is kind of wrapped up, but last season we saw Rodrigo coming off the bench and being an impact sub. This year, Madrid look a little lighter in that category, with only being supported by Asensio and Mac's favorite player, Dani Ceballos, coming on for cameos. Really, other than that, maybe Eden Hazard. In terms of in games where Madrid will need to, if they do, need to come back and chase a game, are you worried at all about some of those attacking options, or the way Vinny, Rodrigo, and Benz are just operating at this moment is just too high of a level, and there should be nothing to worry about there?
I think it'll come down to sort of, not so much Vinny and Benz. I think Vinny and Benz will always get theirs. It's more so, who was hot early in the season or who was hot last year, and that was, Valverde. If he can drag the attention away from them and possibly score one or two, that would be huge for Real Madrid, especially in the next round of the Champions League. So if he is able to contribute in that sense and have more offensive games that he, at one point was very prone to having, then I think that changes this. That changes the whole view of whether the depth is going to be a problem. I don't think it's necessarily going to be a problem if the others contribute. And again, I think the midfield is strong enough to compensate for that, to be able to create those chances. I still have I think a lot of people still have a lot of faith in Luka Modric to really try and contribute, put one in from outside the box. Like he had a couple of chances this game that
as he almost did, yeah.
As he almost did, curled one of the top bins, but just missed by a couple inches. So yeah, I'm not really too worried. I think more worried if if fatigue becomes an issue. I know games are piling up, especially late into the season. If they pick up a knock, I know Benzema's been getting injured quite often this season, so hopefully, on those lower table games in La Liga, they're able to get some other guys into the rotation.
Mac?
I want to touch on this because the reason why I like kind of where you're coming from in terms of worried about them offensively, and Gio pointing out Valverde, as well as the lineup that we looked at. The real problem for me is Tchouaméni, because this is kind of a knockdown effect, because if he's being shifted out, it kind of brings everyone back a position than necessarily want, whereas I don't view Rodrigo personally as kind of a starting level caliber player for this Real Madrid team. He can be an impact sub, and that's probably where he's best utilized. But the reason why Valverde has to start in midfield is because, for whatever reason, Tchouaméni, I think you put in the chat at one point, Ray, for us, is that he's been in the doghouse. He's not playing. So what's going on? Because for me, that role against the bigger team, having a good kind of destructive defensive midfielder, because in the next matchup, if they were to go through, they're facing City. I'm sorry, the midfield of Cruz, Luka Modric, and Valverde is not touching KDB or Gundogan by themselves, just those two. And not to mention Rodri. They need more of a defensive presence there. Some of that is kind of going to be able to do the Casemiro role in a lot of ways, because that's something against these bigger teams that they're sorely missing. So less so offensively, I think the problem is in the midfield, which if they're able to get Tchouaméni back in form, or Camavinga is able to kind of play in that position potentially, where instead of playing for a left back all the time, for whatever reason, I don't think he wants to play there. But again, it's confusing. Maybe Ancelotti saw this at the World Cup. It's like, we if you need to spot some minutes, or maybe in this matchup, hey, Chelsea not going to score anyway, let's get him some minutes. Either way, I understand. But I think that position is going to be very vital for them going forward into the competition, because we're all going to assume, even though we're going to do a preview of this next fixture, Real Madrid in all likelihood are going to win out. But the question is, when they face the next team, which in all likelihood will be City, that midfield role is going to become, if they lose, in all likelihood, in my opinion, that's where they'll lose it. So they need to sort that out, and they still have some time to do that. But that's more so what I'd be worried about them for.
Yeah, no, great shout. Something to keep in mind for sure. And lastly, I know you guys covered this, but I want to say my piece on that Ben Chilwell red card. Mac, I know you said a couple weeks back, maybe a couple months back now, today you stand with Ukraine. Yesterday I stood with Ben Chilwell, because at that point I had to take that red card. Chelsea were never going to score, so if I can deny a goal scoring opportunity for Madrid and keep it at 1-0, I'll take it. Unfortunately for them, and if I'm Lampard, I would be stressed. They were conceded through a very, very poorly defended short corner, where the defenders were not awake at all. And, it's fine if you concede a goal like Rodri's. They just pulled something out of top bins. Excellent technique, excellent play. But the way they conceded the second goal is very, very alarming for Chelsea. And that's not something you want to see from them. So we'll keep an eye out on how they do this weekend. We'll probably touch on that a little bit later on. But that's definitely something that they need to address. So let's take one last break here, boys, and then we'll be back with some previews for the upcoming Premier League games. So stay with us. Welcome back to Also Footy, guys. We're going to finish off today's podcast previewing some Premier League games for the upcoming weekend. First game we're going to cover now is Aston Villa and Newcastle. Mac, both teams are playing very, very well at this moment, trying to cement their respective spots in the European places for the Premier League. What are your predictions for this game? Simply.
I think this will absolutely be a fascinating fixture. I think a big miss is going to be Saint Maximin. Looks like he's going to be out. I think it's a grade 2 sprain that he has, so it's probably going to be 5 weeks. I think that's what was reported. So On the bright side, he's going to miss the Arsenal game, but that's neither here nor there. But for this individual fixture, this is a tough matchup, and I think this is going to be a great litmus test, much more for Aston Villa, considering that they've been kind of pole vaulting themselves up the Premier League table. Whereas match week 27, they're 11th, and right now they're 6th. So they've been climbing up the table quite steadily over the last couple of match weeks. So they're going to be in a position, I feel like, where if they come out with a positive result here, they're going to even further cement themselves as more of a threat, and potentially can hamper a Newcastle side that is missing one of their best attacking options. They have more depth now. I wouldn't be surprised if we see an Anthony Gordon finally start. I think he's only started one game, mostly kind of been used as a late sub rotation, but I'm interested to see for him to come on and play in one of these big fixtures, which is why he asked for kind of, or more so forced that transfer in January, which I know Ray loves to bring up. But overall, I think this matchup can be fascinating. I think the interesting part for me is that both teams are so strong defensively under their managers with Eddie Howe, and since Unai Emery has come in for Aston Villa, the team has really turned down on that side of the ball. Less so, even more so offensively, where they've still been able to bag goals. So I wouldn't be surprised if this start as a low-scoring game that has a lot of technical talent on both teams, and maybe we have just that one moment of brilliance or that one small mistake that edges it out for either team. But overall, fascinating matchup.
Yeah, I guess same question for you, Gio. Obviously, two standout players for each team: Ollie Watkins for Aston Villa and Alex Isak for Newcastle. I guess battle of the strikers for this game. What do you got?
More battle of strikers. Yes, it's. I would say it's almost even, but again, it's hard to argue that. It's hard to fight against that Newcastle midfield. I think is been on such a good. It has been in such good form that if you're talking about putting up players one for one, I think one for one, pound for pound, Newcastle has the better players. So I think they will come out with the win, but I think it will be a very fun game to watch. I think there will be a lot of them going back and forth with each other and seeing who can score more goals.
Yeah, and it's again when I remember we touched on it before. Very very experienced manager Eddie Howe, not the most experienced manager, but will be interesting to see how they match up tactically for this match. So definitely one to keep an eye on. But the next one as well, we're going to keep an eye on Chelsea versus Brighton. Can Chelsea get a win here, or will it be 3 losses in a row for Lampard? What are your thoughts, Mac?
It will be 3 losses in a row for Lampard. I would love to see it. It'll be hilarious. It'll be very interesting to see is it possible for Lampard to get fired before the end of the season. That's what I mentioned. That's what I mentioned. This is what gets very interesting to me, because that could be hilarious and very fun. So I would love to see it, as well as Brighton have been playing. But on a more, Brighton have been playing phenomenal football. They're a great team, very technically gifted. I wouldn't be surprised if Matoma is able to kind of have his way if in that matchup. If Reece James playing at wing back, if he's able to get in behind him and kind of take on Wesley Fofana one-on-one, which he struggled against a lot of players, going back to when he's been one-on-one against Martinelli in that system, when he's been one-on-one against Vinicius in that system. And Matoma, I don't think is too far away from those levels of players potentially. So considering how well he's been playing, considering his form, so I think it could be a very dangerous matchup for Chelsea. We can guarantee at the very least Chelsea are going to score, so Brighton have a great shot to win. So I think that for me, that's the matchup I'm looking at if you were to pick out one aspect here, as well as De Zerbi as a manager is going to outclass Lampard in all likelihood in terms of how he's going to set up his team. And on the bright side, if Cucurella does play against Brighton, maybe he'll be like, okay, you know what? My Chelsea career is almost over. May as well help them out, and hopefully I can get a transfer back, right, guys? So that's pretty much it. That's all I got. Gio?
Look, Chelsea, man, just wrap it up. Hey, man, just give it a rest. Start Conor Gallagher, start Kai Havertz, start Mason Mount for all I care, because ain't none gonna work, brother. Ain't none gonna work. Caicedo's gonna cook. Matoma's gonna cook. And McAllister's gonna cook. It's just, Lewis Dunk, hopefully. All those guys. I hope they have great games. Seeing this Chelsea downfall couldn't make me happier. Another big 6 team, struggling. What can be better than that? So, but honestly, I just I just can't see them, getting a result. Even if they don't lose, I don't think they'll get a result. It's just Brighton's too well rounded, too well coached at this point. And Chelsea are mentally just not there right now. Can't put away easy goals. And I just hate watching Raheem Sterling run. It's just not a fun sight, boys. So yeah, let's go Brighton.
For me, I'm interested to see if Brighton will make it a 10-point gap. Yes, I said it. 10-point gap between themselves and Chelsea if they beat Chelsea this weekend. Outlandish that we have to say this, but hey, it could happen. And for me as well, areas to watch are definitely watching that Spurs Brighton game last weekend. Brighton unlucky to lose that game. Very, very bright going forward, especially drawing defenders into that midfield, sort of with their build-up play, drawing them into the midfield, and then spreading the ball out wide to Marsh and Matoma. So definitely areas to watch as well. Lastly, to finish on this game, McAllister against Enzo, two Argentinian midfielders, and something will be interesting to watch who comes out on top for this game set. Let's move on to another game. Man United are home to Nottingham Forest. Sorry, they are away to Nottingham Forest this weekend. What are your takes on this game?
How are they going to bounce back from today? Shocking. It wasn't a complete collapse, but to lose a game, well, not lose a game, to lose a lead of that stature. I jokingly said it in the group chat. They probably learned a lot from Arsenal, letting a 2-goal lead slip. But no, I think it was what could have gone wrong. Like, everything went wrong. They lost a 2-goal lead. It was an own goal for a player, in Harry Maguire, who was slowly getting more steady. Limited his mistakes through the span that he's been playing, which is great for the player confidence. But to let the tying goal go off, your foot like that, or like wherever it went off, I forget, and to go in is very kind of defeating in that sense. And then on top of it all, cherry on top of the cake, your best center back is injured now. So obviously, they have players that can slot in, but Lisandro Martinez brings the type of fight that it's very clear that it's a different type of mentality that he brings, and a different type of energy that he brings. So they need everybody to come out on the right foot, and just really play a very solid game. Obviously top 4 races is tighter than ever, so they need to beat a bottom table team, and they need to do it quite convincingly at that.
Yeah, Mac, as we saw a host of changes in the game against Sevilla, being 2-0 up at half. Again, they do have the return leg in Sevilla next week. With that playing to Man U players' minds in this upcoming game against Nottingham Forest, who at time of recording are now in the relegation zone. What are your thoughts, Mac?
So I think this fixture prior to today, which was to me not interesting at all, to after today opens up the door a little bit, because you're talking about missing your best offensive player, missing your best defensive player. I think it did Varane come off with an injury as well, why he was subbed at halftime. So you're potentially missing in this fixture your 2 best center backs as well. So you're going back to an era where you're playing Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof again against a team away from home. That's not the greatest look, and definitely Malacia didn't kind of cover himself with glory, considering he handled that first goal against Manchester United. So like I said, a fixture that was for me not interesting at all became interesting because of those injuries, because of the manner. And you even said it yourself, Gio, in terms of how you talked about the game. You started off with saying a loss, because that's what it really felt like. Even though you ended up kind of only coming out with a draw from that fixture. It really did feel like a loss more than most kind of draws would end up feeling like, considering the manner, considering how well they started off playing, considering that they should have been up 3-4-0 if people were a little bit more clinical up front. But I think this fixture, a lot of eyes are going to be on those attacking players. Martial, I think he has a goal contribution of under, I think it's like 82 minutes. He averages either getting a goal or assist. So he's playing well in those spot minutes. So we'll see if that continues, if Anthony's able to perform well. Defensively, people are able to step up. I think the only positive going into this fixture is now Casemiro is returning from his suspension. So if this becomes, like I said, this becomes an interesting fixture for me. We're not enforced. Maybe can look at it like, hey, maybe we can't get something out of this game, considering these changes. But Manchester United should still be heavy favorites and need the momentum because they're going right after this fixture. They still have to play, it's a little bit later on in the month, but Spurs. And that's their direct top 4 rival. So hopefully these injuries do come back and they need all 3 points in this one to set themselves up playing away at Spurs in the near future.
Yeah, and Spurs is the next team we're going to talk about. Gio, they face Bournemouth in their next game. Bournemouth, who, as you rightly touted, can score against big teams. Just, I guess, under the radar, they do have attackers that are willing to, throw bodies forwards and get the odd goal up there, cause havoc. And who better than to go at this shaky Spurs defense? So, Gio, how do you think this game will play out?
Look, I think again, I'm a firm believer in Bournemouth. They're definitely a team that I actually enjoy watching. They love getting forward and they love rewarding their strikers. So, this can be a game where there can be a lot of goals because that Spurs defense is quite shaky. But also, Spurs on the right day can score a lot themselves. Obviously, Son scoring a great goal last week. Does he start? Does he get the wheels turning late into the season? That's a possibility. He came out talking about how he's going through a rough time in terms of his grandfather passing. Hopefully, that's a little bit more cleared up now. And he's more focused on the game. He's more able to focus on the game, but Bournemouth have a very good opportunity to kind of almost clear themselves further away from that relegation zone. Sitting at 30 points at 15th right now. A win can bring them all the way up to 13th or maybe even 12th. So with that being said, it's a great opportunity for them to not only jump and prove themselves as a Premier League side. They can definitely secure a spot further away from the relegation zone, which is still a tight battle given Nottingham Forest at 27 points, Everton at 27 points, who's at 17th. A couple of wins here and there, a couple of draws here and there can send Bournemouth back into that area. So I think they're going to be very keen on getting a good result this week.
Okay, and Mac, top 4 still a possibility for Spurs. This is where all of the efforts are going to be pushed into. What are your thoughts on this game?
Must win for Spurs. They absolutely have to be able to win this game to stay in the competition, to be able to finish in a Champions League place. I think they are, in all likelihood, are going to come out with the win in this fixture, and it's going to tee up, as I highlighted earlier, a fascinating matchup between them and Manchester United, a really big 6-pointer. That I think these 2 next games will really decide, are they going to stay in until the end of the season, or are they going to be out of it? So they need to do the first part of that by winning all 3 points here. And as of right now, they're a team that can do that because they can in some ways guarantee opportunities to score through a Kane, Son, or Kulusevski. I feel like they're going to have enough up top from the 3 of them to be able to do something. The matter will be can they play well enough defensively to make sure that they have a strong enough platform where they don't need to score 4 or 5 goals. If they score 2, they're comfortable. I think that's going to be their key aspect for them. They're going to play well enough defensively, and I guess this Bournemouth team, who are not, they can score the odd goal and can play defensively well in certain games, but they're just not consistent enough at it. So I feel like this might be a little bit too much for them, in my opinion. And I wish for, because I really want that Spurs Man U matchup to be fascinating and Gio to be sweating it out.
That's what we're all hoping for. But on that note, guys, this concludes our podcast. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. at house_of_footy is where you'll find us. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Tuesday when we review this weekend's Premier League games and we preview the second leg of the Champions League quarterfinals. Thank you, Mac, for joining us.
Today is not a holiday. Thank you.
And thank you, Gio.
Come on, United, do better.
See you guys soon.